6 months after the original Deep Dungeon, here's the sequel, Yuushi no Monshou, Deep Dungeon. As you might expect from a sequel that's turned around in just 6 months, it is extremely similar to the original game. Even the plot is directly derivative. It's been decades since the demon lord Lu was defeated by the swordsman Raul in the first game, and now Lu's been resurrected, and Raul's descendant shows up, and guess what they're going to do? Despite that story, it is possible to import your character from the original Deep Dungeon. Well, I say that, but you do get downgraded severely. When the game starts, you're dumped off in a town which consists of a temple, a marketplace, and that's it. The temple is where you have to go to get healed. There's no inn this time. And the market has stalls for weapons, armor, consumable items, and a place to sell some of your junk. You're given 200 gold to start with, which is enough to get a decent weapon and a little bit of armor, and then it's off to the dungeon. And the dungeon this time is a tower with a dungeon below it. You start on the first floor of the tower, and the floors are more interconnected in this one. In the very first room there's a way to go up, and in the second room there's a way to go down. Presumably that's because you'll have to constantly go back to town to recover your health. In the dungeon you hit B to access the side menu, and the options are attack, items, search, talk, stats, and run away. You'll jump right into that side menu when you encounter something, and just like the original Deep Dungeon, enemy encounters are based on a timer rather than movement, so you could just get jumped anytime, anyplace. It also means that their attacks are based on time, so if you mash the button fast you can get multiple attacks in. You do have to go into your inventory and equip any items that you purchased. In the first game that was done automatically, and if you replace an item then it goes into your inventory so that you can take it back to town to sell for next to nothing. You have 4 stats: attack, defense, agility, and luck. The first 2 are obvious enough, and agility affects how quickly you attack and how likely you are to run away, while luck determines critical hits and what you get out of chests. All of these stats start at 1, and you increase attack and defense a lot by equipping items. You also get points when you level up that you can assign to any of the 4 stats, and this alternates between 2 and 4 points depending on the level. The cheapest items that you can find and use at the very start give you +5 to your attack or defense, and you have 2 slots that apply to the defense, shield and armor. So that means just your starting cash is worth 15 levels in those 2 stats. And the statistics get worse from there. Before I finished my hour recording time, I had purchased a weapon that gave me +40 to my attack stat. At that point I was level 3, so if I had dumped all of the points that I had gained at that time into attack, it would give me +9 attack there, at the cost of everything else. Basically, don't put points into attack and defense. Agility and luck are the only things you'll want to upgrade. In particular, luck. There are cursed items that can permanently lower your agility back to 1, so luck winds up being the most valuable option. The way the game works is that money is way more valuable than experience, and so you'll wind up going in a big loop, collecting treasure chests on a floor, then going back to town. A dungeon completely resets when you leave it, and once you out-level the monsters for a floor, you'll stop getting random encounters. I do think the dungeon is better constructed this time. It's more interconnected, and there's a few more things happening, like special hidden items that you'll need to complete the game, and every floor has a boss that you'll have to defeat in order to open a path. But it's also nothing really out there. The way the game progresses, you'll go to the top of the tower first, and then you'll start descending through the dungeon. I cleared the first 2 of 4 tower floors during my hour of play, though I did have a map handy so I wouldn't be wandering in circles forever. You can save your progress at any time in the dungeon by pressing start, and you're going to want to do that early and often, especially when you're exploring a new area. You won't know that you've wandered into danger until you've encountered something that can instantly defeat you. One weird thing to be aware of is that there's a bit of additional copy protection on Yuushi no Monshou. I know this because I somehow tripped it while I was playing. It's 40-year-old magnetic media. Things are gonna happen. Anyways, if the game detects that it's an invalid copy, you get this screen telling you that the game is on sale now. Another thing to be aware of is that the original release of the game, as in the one that you bought with the box, and the one that you purchased with the disc rewriter kiosk are different. One of the dungeon floors has been completely changed between those two versions. There seems to be quite a few people who remember this one in Japan, even more so than the original game. There's plenty of people with fondness for the game's soundtrack, and who also recall it being very difficult. Though I'll point out that the difficulty isn't really linear. If you're just exploring and beating up monsters, it's really easy to steamroll this game. If you really wanted to, because the game operates in real time, you can park yourself on a level where you're not going to get hurt, rubber down the A button on your controller, and go to bed. The real challenge comes in because there are lots of hidden items that have no marking on the map, and you're required to have them at certain points to progress. You can't save on certain levels of the dungeon unless you have a particular item, for example. And when you confront the Dark Lord Lu, if you haven't found the correct item, then you can't make any progress. There are cryptic clues hidden around on the dungeon walls, but you'll have to do a lot of trial and error and fumbling around searching every square. Or you could follow a guide. Now despite that, I think Yuushi no Monshou is a much better dungeon game than Deep Dungeon. It's still not especially, deep, but there is more going on here. And it's pretty short. If you are following a guide, you can finish the game in probably about 3 hours. When I stopped after an hour, I was maybe 2 or 3 more laps of the treasures of the first 2 floors away from maxing out my purchasable armor. And since the levels don't matter for your attack and defense, I would have started snowballing through the rest of the game. As it is, I'd call it a solid mid-tier, mid-80s dungeon crawler. There's not enough going on here to really elevate it, but it does do enough that there's a game to play.